All the World's a Stage is about a closeted high school teacher in the 90s in a small town high school who reluctantly gets roped into coaching a student for the state thespian competition. And in doing so, kind of inadvertently sparks some backlash from a local church who wants to pull some materials from the school library, and this teacher's very carefully compartmentalized life comes crashing down, and he's got to figure out how to deal with it. It's very much inspired by several of my own teachers in high school. This piece, it was commissioned by a fantastic off-Broadway company in New York called Keen Company. And they approached me in the middle of the pandemic and said, hey, do you want to write a kind of intimate chamber musical for us? And so I, of course, during the pandemic, during the shutdown, was thinking a lot about theater and what theater means to people, and what theater can and cannot do to save the world and make the world a better place. And I think in thinking through that question, I started thinking a lot about my teachers in high school. I happened to go to a magnet school for the arts. It was a public school, but you could kind of major in different artistic areas. So I was a theater major. And one of the cool things about it being a public school that focused on the arts was it drew teachers in all subjects who really were passionate about the arts in some way. So your math teacher loved the arts, your science teacher loved the arts, and it always just struck me how people from all walks of life, all professions, all areas of interest can be touched and changed and shaped by the arts. Um, so I was thinking a lot about my teachers during this time. And of course, you can't help but escape the news of, teachers really facing this really difficult moment in terms of censorship and LGBT identity in the classroom. So I was thinking about all of that, thinking about, what would it have made a difference to me as a young gay kid who wasn't sort of able to face that as a teenager? Would it have made a difference to have had an openly gay role model in as a teacher or as an adult in my life during that time? So all of these questions were kind of swirling around in my head and really led to the creation of this piece. Well, for this one, really the story came first. This piece is a little bit unusual in that I have written the whole thing. So I've written the script and the music and the lyrics, which I've only done one time before. Most often, I'm writing music and lyrics and collaborating with a playwright who's writing the script. But this story felt really personal, and I wanted to kind of challenge myself and to push myself out of my comfort zone. So I really took a long time to figure out the story and think about the story. So that really came first in this instance. And once that was in place, I started writing the songs and kind of fleshed things out from there. The development process of writing musical is very intensive. And I think especially for this one where I was doing everything on my own, it was just sort of relentless. I couldn't write a song and then pass things off to my collaborator to work on the scene. It was all me. So for me it was very, very intensive. And we're still relatively early in the process of this piece. I say relatively because musicals oftentimes take many, many, many years to develop. It's funny because the process is both very intensive and also very drawn out, especially when you're working with like a big theater or a big producer to get things off the ground. So with this piece, we've been able to be a little bit more nimble because it's an intimate piece written specifically for this particular company that deals with more intimate productions. So the reading in Greenville will be the third reading that we've heard of the piece, but the very first reading with an actual real audience. So I'm very, very excited. Mm. Um, some of the themes in the piece that I think really speak to today are around this idea of authenticity, and I think how a big question that's on my mind, even though the piece is set in the late '90s, a thing that's on my mind about today is, we so much of our world feels so polarized, and being able to carve out your identity and be able to feel like you're being true to yourself where in situations where you may be caught between you know groups and situations that feel very charged and very polarized. I think it's a very particular challenge about today, and there's such a feeling today of like having to take sides, and I think that is so counter to the human experience, and when we are actually face to face with other human beings in situations that feel kind of charged. I think this idea of taking sides is not necessarily the answer, and so I think this piece is sort of investigating that question. What does it mean to be true to yourself, but also be open to a world that is full of all kinds of people and all kinds of beliefs? And I think that's something that feels very relevant to me today. Well, this will be my first time to Greenville, so I am excited just to see the place and meet the people. One of my dearest friends and collaborators is from the Greenville area, and so she's got me very excited. Her parents live nearby. I hope they're going to come to the reading. But I just one of the unexpected pleasures of being in the theater and being a writer in the theater is getting to travel to places that I've never been before. So I'm really excited just to see what Greenville's all about.